Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking on an urgent and incredibly complex topic, the state of the crisis in Palestine, and we're looking specifically at where things stand as 2025 draws to a close. And our mission today is really to go beyond the headlines. We're here to give you the context, the knowledge you need to, actually understand this moment. We've gone through a whole stack of sources. A big one is a security assessment called Palestine in 2025, but also reports from humanitarian agencies, international councils, things like that. We're trying to find the key nuggets of information that tell the real story.
Exactly. This is all about context. The goal isn't just to list current events, the what, but to really grasp the terrifying depth of the humanitarian strain and just how tangled the political landscape is.
Right.
Why, after all this time and all this global attention, is progress still completely stalled? That's the question we're trying to help you answer today, to give you that really comprehensive picture.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the dire situation on the ground in Gaza. It's a place that has just been, well, it's borne the brunt of sustained hostilities for more than 2 years now. And what the sources show right away is this paradox. There was a ceasefire announced back in October 2025, but the word that keeps coming up to describe conditions is dire. That contradiction says so much.
It really does. And that story, it's fundamentally about a breakdown of logistics, of basic human support. The word dire basically translates to a total failure in aid delivery.
Right.
I mean, the fragility of the whole situation is just laid bare by this massive gap between what was agreed to and the reality on the ground.
So let's get into those numbers. What was the goal? What was agreed to in the ceasefire?
The sources all confirmed the target, the absolute minimum, was 600 aid trucks entering Gaza every single day. That was seen as the baseline just to meet essential needs.
600. And where are we now in early December?
It's a crippling shortfall. We're seeing, on average, only about 140 trucks getting in daily.
Wow, just 140?
And that's not just a statistic. That's the line between survival and starvation for millions of people. It means reliable access to food, to clean water, healthcare. It's just out of reach, even with the fighting supposedly paused. Yeah, the whole system just collapses.
It's a jarring number, and here's where it gets even more complicated because you have a natural event compounding this man-made catastrophe, the weather.
That's a crucial point. The reports talk specifically about worsening winter storms. There's one, Storm Byron, that caused just severe widespread flooding.
And this isn't just, a bit of rain.
No, not at all. This is water-trapping families in tents, what's left of them, damaging the few temporary shelters that exist. I mean, can you imagine surviving months of conflict and then your last bit of protection, a tent, is just washed away? It's about dignity, about safety, and it's all gone.
And that just feeds directly into the biggest tragedy here, which is food insecurity. The numbers on health they're devastating.
They are. The UN reported, just for October, over 9,000 cases of severe acute malnutrition in children who were hospitalized for it.
9,000 in 1 month.
In 1 month.
Yeah.
It's a profound indicator of systemic failure. And when malnutrition hits kids that hard, the damage, the stunting, the developmental issues, that becomes generational.
That phrase, felt for generations, it just completely changes the scale of this. But, amidst all this ruin, the sources do point to these small signs of resilience.
It's a really powerful contrast, isn't it? You see reports that some schools run by UN agencies have actually reopened. Tens of thousands of kids are going back to learning.
Even if it's in a bombed-out building.
Exactly. Even if it's rudimentary, it shows this incredible human drive to create some kind of future, some hope, when you're surrounded by complete destruction.
But like you said, these small steps, they can't hide the scale of what's needed for reconstruction.
Not at all. And that's the so what here. It's the sheer infrastructural collapse. We're talking hospitals, power grids, water purification. It's all in ruins. The long-term socioeconomic effects are just. They're going to create this massive humanitarian debt for generations to come. It's not just about rebuilding walls.
It's rebuilding an entire society.
The very foundation of it.
Okay, so that's Gaza. Structural collapse, humanitarian scarcity. Let's pivot now to the occupied West Bank, because the crisis there looks very different. The sources describe it as volatile, and the security environment is repeatedly called alarming.
And that's a really key distinction. Gaza is dealing with this acute post-conflict collapse. The West Bank is dealing with this persistent daily friction. It's a different kind of pressure cooker entirely.
So what are the main sources of that friction day to day?
It's multifaceted. You have Palestinian civilians in frequent clashes with Israeli security forces, at checkpoints during operations. But then you also have this escalating issue of settler violence, which the reports are really highlighting as a separate, growing problem.
A combination of official and unofficial actions.
Precisely. And that blend keeps the whole environment just constantly on edge.
And then you get these political moves that just pour gasoline on the fire. Like this week, Israel approved construction for 764 new housing units in West Bank settlements.
Right. And that drew immediate condemnation. And for you, the listener, it's important to understand this isn't just rhetoric. It's rooted in international law.
Okay, can you explain that?
Well, Palestinian leaders and a lot of international legal experts, they point to the Fourth Geneva Convention. The core argument is that an occupying power can't transfer its own population into territory it occupies. So these projects are seen not just as bad policy, but as potential violations of international law.
So they don't just inflame tensions locally, they actively undermine the whole diplomatic process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And running parallel to that, you have these really deep human rights concerns, specifically about detention operations in the West Bank.
What kind of concerns?
Rights groups are flagging reports of systemic abuse and even deaths in custody. The sources cite a specific incident, the death of a 21-year-old Palestinian while detained by Israeli forces.
And one incident like that becomes a flashpoint for much broader issues.
It does. It brings attention to the whole system,
Mm-hmm.
the legal protections, the medical care for detainees. It just completely erodes any trust and creates huge risks for stability.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. We have this acute humanitarian crisis in Gaza, collapsing infrastructure, aid deficits. Then you have this volatile security situation in the West Bank, fueled by settlements and these human rights concerns. So what does all this mean for any prospect of peace? Where are the roadblocks?
Well, if you connect all those dots, you have to see that the gridlock now is built on over a century of disputes. I mean, the
Wow.
roots of this are so deep. Competing territorial claims, contested governance, unresolved political status, it's all coming to a head.
And you can really feel that gridlock at the diplomatic level. The two-state solution has been the gold standard for decades, but right now, progress is not just stalled. Some sources say it's actively unraveling.
It is, which raises the question, right? If the old framework isn't working, what are the different paths being pushed by the major players? And we have to be really impartial here as we lay them out.
Okay, so let's start with the international, maybe the Western proposals. What are they focused on?
Well, on one side, you have some governments pushing for renewed negotiations, maybe under a new framework. But a really crucial point for others is this idea of a complete overhaul of governance in Gaza before any real peace can be discussed.
A governance overhaul. What does that actually mean in practice?
It's a sensitive idea, but it's generally about making sure Gaza can't be used as a base for militant action again. It usually proposes some kind of temporary technocratic authority, maybe backed by regional forces, to manage reconstruction and demilitarization. It's about security guarantees first, before a political solution.
I see. That's a very security-focused approach. How does that vision clash with what Palestinian civil society is demanding?
It's a direct clash. Their view is rooted in the humanitarian and legal reality we just talked about. They argue that you can't have peace without an immediate end to the Israeli occupation, without unrestricted humanitarian access, the 600 trucks, not 140, and full respect for international law.
So it's a question of priorities.
It is. For them, any talk of restructuring governance before ending the occupation is just a denial of their fundamental rights to sovereignty and dignity.
So security demands clashing with sovereignty demands. That's a huge divide. And this is where global forums like the UN come in, right? They
Yeah.
always maintain that you have to address the core historical grievances.
Exactly. And the reason peace is so elusive is because of the deep disagreement on 4 core unresolved issues. And these aren't small negotiating points. They're existential.
Can you lay out those 4 roadblocks for us?
Sure. First, you have the status of East Jerusalem. Both sides claim it as a capital, a massive hurdle. Second, security arrangements. How much long-term security control for Israel versus how much sovereignty for Palestinians?
Okay, what's the third?
Third is refugee rights. This is about the right of return for Palestinians displaced in past conflicts, a huge demographic and political challenge. And the fourth is viable political representation for Palestinians.
Right, back to the governance question.
Exactly. How do you ensure any future state is representative, recognized, and economically viable, especially when Gaza and the West Bank are governed so differently and are so broken infrastructurally?
The final analysis here is just, it's stark. The divide on these core issues is so deep that international pressure, even though it's mounting, hasn't led to any kind of breakthrough. The diplomatic tools just don't seem to fit the problem.
And that reality on the diplomatic level is what keeps the tension so high on the ground.
Right.
It makes the humanitarian crisis a chronic condition, not a temporary tragedy.
So there you have it, the full picture, the metrics of the humanitarian strain, the aid truck deficits, the tragic malnutrition rates. You have the flashpoints of tension, like the settlements and the detainee concerns, and, the painful complexity of the political demands from all sides.
And the humanitarian agencies, they're closing the year with a really stark warning.
Yeah.
They're saying that without sustained, massively expanded aid and without real political progress, the risk of more suffering, more volatility is only going to go up.
So while rebuilding hospitals and schools is obviously critical, the sources all suggest that the long-term socioeconomic damage, the displacement, the lost livelihoods, that's going to be felt for generations, a multi-generational debt. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. Beyond all the physical infrastructure, what is the most critical non-physical resource that has to be rebuilt? Is it education? Is it dignity? Or is it just sustained hope for the next generation of Palestinians to truly thrive? Something to mull over as you process what we've unpacked today.